I was lying in bed, fever-soaked sheets twisted around my legs, when my phone vibrated. The screen's harsh glow made my head pound harder. I almost didn't answer. My fingers fumbled across the nightstand, knocking over a half-empty water bottle. "Hi, this is Paula from HR." Her voice was bright. Too bright for someone calling an employee on medical leave. "We've decided to terminate your employment effective immediately." My fingers tightened around the phone. I tasted metal in my mouth, that sharp flavor that comes with shock. The ceiling fan blurred above me. This couldn't be real. "I'm on approved medical leave," I whispered, my throat raw from 3 days of fever. There was a pause. I heard papers shuffling on her end. Then her voice came back, rehearsed and final. "This decision has been made at the management level." "It's final." The call ended. Just like that. 5 years of my life, disconnected with the same ease as hanging up a phone. No warning. No explanation. No humanity. Just the low hum of my ceiling fan and the sound of my own breathing turning sharp and panicked. I stared at Paula's number on my screen like it had personally betrayed me. My thumb hovered over the callback button, but what would I say? What could I say that would matter to people who fired someone during a medical emergency? The phone slipped from my hand onto the blanket. I closed my eyes and tried to process what had just happened. 5 years. Gone. While I was sick. While I was following their approved medical leave process. While I was doing exactly what their own HR department had told me to do. My apartment was silent except for that fan. The late afternoon sun cut through my blinds in thin orange strips. I should have been scared. I should have been panicking about bills, about health insurance, about my future. Instead, something cold settled in my chest. Something calm and calculating. They thought I was weak. They thought I was disposable. They thought I would crawl away quietly, too sick and defeated to fight back. That assumption would cost them everything. My name is Allison Damien, and until 3 hours ago, I was a senior client strategist at Brightwell Consulting. We were a mid-sized firm that specialized in corporate restructuring and strategy development. The kind of company that sold relationships more than actual results. And every major client relationship they had? I built it. Not Victor Randy, my director, who loved taking credit in board meetings. Not the partnerships team that showed up for celebratory dinners but never the difficult negotiations. Not the junior strategists who handled paperwork while I handled the CEOs who signed million-dollar contracts. Me. Just me. For 5 years, I had been the bridge between Brightwell and the companies that kept our doors open. I knew their business challenges before they did. I answered their calls at midnight when crises hit. I flew to Detroit in February and Houston in August because relationships aren't built over email. I made Brightwell $8 million last year alone. My portfolio accounted for 60% of the firm's revenue. And they fired me while I was sick. 6 weeks earlier, my doctor had pressed a note into my hand with more force than necessary. Her face was tight with concern. "Severe burnout," she said firmly. "You stop now, or your body will stop you." I had laughed. I actually laughed, standing in her sterile office with my blood pressure reading taped to the wall behind her. "I can't just stop. I have 3 major presentations next month." "Allison." She leaned forward. "You've lost 12 pounds in 2 months. You're not sleeping. Your immune system is shutting down. This isn't optional anymore." So I went to HR. I sat across from Paula in her small office that smelled like artificial lavender, and I submitted my medical documentation. She had smiled that professional smile and assured me everything would be handled appropriately. "Take all the time you need," she said, sliding the approved paperwork across her desk. "Your health comes first." I believed her. That was my first mistake. My second mistake was not seeing what was really happening behind those rehearsed words of concern. 2 days before the termination call, I got a text from my co-worker Marcus. We had started at Brightwell the same week 5 years ago, bonding over terrible orientation coffee and shared confusion about the company's organizational chart. The message came through at 8 in the morning. "They're restructuring. Your accounts are being reassigned. Thought you should know." I stared at my phone screen, heart suddenly pounding despite the fever medication. My hands started shaking, and not from being sick. I called Marcus immediately. What do you mean, restructuring? Victor called a meeting yesterday. Marcus kept his voice low, like he was hiding in a conference room. He said your leave was indefinite, and the firm couldn't afford to leave major accounts without primary coverage. He's splitting your portfolio between himself and 2 junior strategists. Did anyone ask about me? Silence. Then, no. I'm sorry, Allison. Nobody pushed back. I ended the call and sat in my apartment, fever breaking in cold sweat across my forehead. They weren't worried about my health. They were worried about control. About keeping those client relationships under Brightwell's roof, regardless of who built them. Victor Randy had been my director for 3 years. He was the kind of manager who said team effort when things went right and Allison's being difficult when I pushed back against impossible deadlines or unethical shortcuts. He was 47, always impeccably dressed, and never met a credit he wouldn't steal. In meetings, he would let me present ideas, nodding thoughtfully, then repackage those exact ideas in emails to senior leadership with his name in bold at the top. When I landed the Crawford Industries account, our biggest client, Victor told the board he had orchestrated the relationship-building strategy. I had been the one flying to their headquarters every month for a year. I had been the one learning about their CEO's concerns about market volatility. I had been the one who structured a proposal that addressed every single one of their pain points. But Victor got the recognition. And the bonus. When I requested medical leave, he had smiled. Actually smiled. Of course, take care of yourself. We'll manage things here. I see it now, that smile. It wasn't concern. It was opportunity. The official email from HR arrived 4 hours after Paula's call. I had managed to drag myself to my laptop, still wrapped in a blanket, fever finally breaking but leaving me weak and shaky. The subject line read, Employment Status Update. Clinical. Impersonal. Like I was a subscription being cancelled. Dear Allison, it began. Due to organizational restructuring, your position has been eliminated effective immediately. This decision was made after careful consideration of business needs and operational efficiency. No mention of medical leave. No mention of timing. No mention of the fact that firing someone during approved medical leave might be, at minimum, ethically questionable. Just clean corporate language designed to erase guilt and cover liability. I laughed. It came out sharp and bitter in my empty apartment. Then I cried, hot tears mixing with the last of my fever sweat. Then I stopped doing both and just stared at the screen. They had carefully worded everything to make it sound like a business decision. Smart. But also stupid, because in their rush to make it legal, they had made it obvious. I was the primary earner in my household. My boyfriend Tyler worked as a freelance graphic designer, which meant income was unpredictable. We split rent, but I covered most expenses. My savings were thin after helping my mother with her medical bills last year. My health insurance would end in 30 days. I had prescriptions that cost $200 without coverage. I had a lease that didn't care about employment status. I had a future that had just become terrifyingly uncertain. They thought I'd crawl away quietly. They thought I'd be too sick, too scared, too desperate to do anything but accept their severance package and disappear. But here's what they didn't know. I had spent 5 years learning exactly how businesses work. I understood leverage. I understood contracts. I understood that relationships, real relationships, don't transfer with a spreadsheet and a memo. They had just made the biggest strategic mistake of their professional lives. They had fired the wrong person at the wrong time in the wrong way. And I was about to teach them what organizational restructuring really looked like. While they locked me out of my work email, something interesting happened. My personal phone started ringing. By the next morning, 3 clients had called me directly. The first was Thomas Brennan, CEO of Crawford Industries. Allison, why didn't you tell us you were leaving Brightwell? I sat up in bed, suddenly very awake. I didn't leave, Thomas. I was let go while on medical leave. Long pause. You're joking. I wish I was. Who's taking over our account? I believe Victor is handling it directly now. Another pause, longer this time. That's interesting. He just sent me an email about exciting new directions for our partnership. Didn't mention you once. I said nothing. Just listened. Listen, Thomas continued, his voice careful. Whatever you do next, keep my number. We've worked together for 4 years. That relationship isn't with Brightwell. It's with you. 2 more calls followed that afternoon. Samantha Price from Pacific Holdings. Marcus Webb from North Point Dynamics. Same questions. Same concern. Same implicit message. They weren't loyal to Brightwell. They were loyal to me. My pulse slowed. My mind cleared. They didn't fire me. They fired the person their clients trusted. I didn't vent on social media. I didn't blast them in industry groups. I didn't send angry emails to Victor or Paula or anyone else at Brightwell. That would have been satisfying for about 30 seconds and stupid for the rest of my life. Instead, I listened. When clients called, I was professional and kind. I'm taking some time to recover, I told them carefully. I appreciate your concern. I didn't badmouth Brightwell. I didn't encourage anyone to leave. I just existed as a professional who had been treated poorly, and I let that fact speak for itself. But I also started planning. I pulled up my old contract with Brightwell, reading every clause about non-compete agreements and client solicitation. I documented every email conversation, every project milestone, every interaction I'd had with clients. I organized 5 years of relationship building into a clear, undeniable record. Knowledge is power, my father used to say. But organized knowledge is a weapon. I was building an arsenal while they thought I was defeated. A week after my termination, I got a message from Carolyn Hughes. She had been my mentor when I first started in consulting, before she left Brightwell to become a partner at Summit Strategies, Brightwell's main competitor. Coffee? Her text read. I heard what happened. We met at a small cafe downtown, far from Brightwell's office. Carolyn slid a business card across the table before I could even order. You were treated horribly, she said, her voice sharp with genuine anger. We don't do that here. I appreciate the support, I started, but she held up her hand. This isn't support. It's a job offer. She pulled out a contract. Senior Client Director. 20% salary increase from what I know you were making. Full benefits, including better health coverage than you had. Equity stake after year 2. I stared at the papers. Everything I had wanted at Brightwell, just sitting there in a manila folder. But I didn't sign. Not yet. Instead, I asked one question, can I bring my clients, only if they choose me? Carolyn smiled. That's exactly how it should work. I spent the next 3 days reading contract law until my eyes burned. Non-compete clauses. Client solicitation rules. Tortious interference. I needed to understand exactly where the legal lines were drawn, because I planned to walk right up to them without crossing over. Here's what I learned. I couldn't directly solicit clients. I couldn't reach out first. I couldn't offer incentives for them to switch. But if clients independently decided to follow me, and if I hadn't actively recruited them, that was perfectly legal. The difference was subtle but critical. I couldn't say leave Brightwell and come to Summit. But if clients called me and asked where I was going, I could answer honestly. If they independently chose to end their contracts with Brightwell and begin new ones with Summit, that was their business decision. Victor had made this easier by announcing my departure in the worst possible way. He had sent a firm-wide email and a LinkedIn post, excited to announce new leadership on key accounts as we restructure for growth. He tagged the clients. Clients who hadn't been consulted. Clients who immediately called me, confused and concerned about why they were learning about major changes through social media. Victor thought he was asserting control. Instead, he was handing me permission to respond to direct inquiries. Thomas Brennan called me again on a Tuesday morning. I had been with Summit for exactly 3 days, still setting up my new office and meeting with Carolyn about transition plans. I got your email, he said. His tone was flat, hard to read. I had sent a brief, professional message to my old clients. I wanted to inform you that I've accepted a position at Summit Strategies. I'm grateful for our time working together and wish you continued success. That was it. No sales pitch. No request to switch. Just information. I need to be clear, I said carefully. I'm not asking you to leave Brightwell. That's entirely your decision based on your business needs. I know you're not asking, Thomas replied. So I'm telling you instead. Crawford Industries is terminating our contract with Brightwell. We'll be reaching out to Summit to discuss new representation. My heart hammered, but I kept my voice steady. I appreciate your confidence. Summit will serve you well. Allison. His voice softened slightly. I don't like how Brightwell handled your leave. And I don't work with companies that treat people like they're disposable. That's not about you convincing me. That's about my values. One client. $4 million in annual revenue. Gone from Brightwell's books in a single phone call. The whispers started spreading through the industry. It's a small world, consulting. Everyone knows everyone. Word gets around fast when major clients start moving. Samantha Price called next. Then Marcus Webb. Then Helena Torres from Riverside Capital. Each conversation was similar. Professional. Careful. But the message was clear. They were choosing to follow me, not because I asked, but because trust doesn't live in a company name. I documented everything. Every incoming call. Every client-initiated conversation. Every decision they made independently. I kept detailed notes with timestamps and exact wording. I knew Victor would eventually try to claim I had violated my non-compete, and I needed proof that I hadn't. By the end of my second week at Summit, 4 major clients had voluntarily left Brightwell. By the end of the third week, 2 more followed. All legally. All initiated by the clients themselves. All completely within the bounds of my contract. Summit's revenue jumped. My new office suddenly felt permanent. Carolyn started introducing me to senior partners as the best hire we've made in 5 years. Meanwhile, Brightwell was bleeding. Victor emailed me for the first time since I got sick. The subject line read, "Professional courtesy." Allison, it began, his tone trying for friendly but landing somewhere near desperate. I hope you're feeling better. I wanted to reach out regarding some client transitions that seem to be happening. Perhaps we could arrange a call to discuss a smooth handover process? I'm sure we can work together on this. I read it 3 times, imagining him at his desk, fingers gripping his expensive pen, trying to figure out how everything had fallen apart so quickly. I didn't reply. Not out of spite. Not out of anger. But because there was nothing to discuss. I hadn't violated any agreements. I hadn't solicited anyone. The clients had made their own choices, and those choices had nothing to do with Victor or his feelings about smooth transitions. He sent a second email 2 days later, more formal. We need to discuss the client situation immediately. I forwarded it to Summit's legal team without responding. They advised me to maintain professional silence. Don't engage. Don't explain. Don't give him anything to twist into evidence of wrongdoing. So I didn't. And my silence was apparently more terrifying than any argument I could have made. Paula called me again. Her voice wasn't bright anymore. It had that thin, strained quality of someone who realizes they've made a terrible mistake but can't admit it out loud. Allison, we need to talk about the client confusion that's happening. I almost laughed. Client confusion. Like the clients were bewildered children who had wandered away by accident, not business leaders who had made calculated decisions. I'm not sure what you mean, I replied calmly. Several of our major accounts have terminated their contracts. They've cited concerns about continuity and relationship management. We believe there may have been some miscommunication about your departure. There was no miscommunication. You fired me while I was on medical leave. The clients found out. They made their own decisions. Silence on her end. Then, we'd like to discuss bringing you back. Perhaps we moved too quickly with the restructuring. Now I did laugh. Short and sharp. No thank you. Allison, please. Let's be reasonable about this. I am being reasonable. You weren't. That's the difference. I ended the call and sat back in my new office chair, looking out at the city skyline. My tea had gone cold, but I felt warm for the first time in weeks. Brightwell's revenue started dropping. Not slowly. Not gradually. It fell like a stone into deep water. The accounts Victor had reassigned couldn't survive without the trust I'd built over years. He was competent at presentations and politics, but he had no idea how to actually maintain relationships. He didn't know that Thomas Brennan's assistant preferred morning meetings because afternoons were for factory floor visits. He didn't know that Samantha Price wanted quarterly reviews, not monthly check-ins, because she valued strategic thinking over constant updates. He knew the contracts. He didn't know the people. And in consulting, people are everything. Marcus, still at Brightwell, texted me updates. Third emergency meeting this week. Victor looks like he hasn't slept in days. 2 junior strategists quit. They said the workload was impossible. Another text a week later, senior partners are asking questions. Board wants answers about the revenue drop. I didn't feel victorious. I felt vindicated. There's a difference. Victory is about defeating someone. Vindication is about being proven right when people doubted you. They had doubted my value. Now they were learning it the expensive way. A month after I joined Summit, I was leading a presentation for a potential new client. Major manufacturer, considering a rebrand. The conference room was full of executives, and I was 3 slides into my deck when I saw him. Victor. Sitting in the back row. He was there representing Brightwell, competing for the same contract. Our eyes met. His face went pale. I kept talking, didn't miss a beat, just continued explaining our strategic approach like he was any other attendee. When I finished, the client's CEO stood up. That was impressive. Victor, would you like to present Brightwell's proposal? Victor stood, adjusted his tie, and launched into his pitch. It was good. Polished. Professional. But it was also generic. Safe. The kind of presentation that checked boxes without inspiring confidence. When he finished, the CEO asked both of us to step outside while they deliberated. In the hallway, Victor finally spoke. You've built a nice little revenge story for yourself. I looked at him. Really looked at him. This isn't revenge, Victor. This is just me doing my job somewhere that values it. If that feels like an attack, maybe you should think about why. He opened his mouth to respond, but the conference room door opened. We'd like to move forward with Summit Strategies. 2 months after my termination, Brightwell held an emergency board meeting. Marcus sent me the aftermath. Victor was removed from his position. Not quietly either. Board level. Public announcement. I stared at the message for a long time. The same HR department that had fired me while I was sick had escorted Victor out of the building, his personal items in a cardboard box. Karma isn't real. Consequences are. He hadn't been fired because the universe decided to balance some cosmic scale. He was fired because he had cost Brightwell millions in revenue and destroyed their reputation with major clients. He had been fired for being bad at his job. My firing had just exposed how bad he actually was. I felt nothing. No satisfaction. No anger. Nothing. That chapter was closed. A week later, Paula emailed me one final time. We wish you the best in your future endeavors. No apology. No acknowledgement of what they'd done. Just a clean corporate goodbye that pretended the whole situation had been inevitable and professional. They didn't deserve my response anyway. I deleted the email and moved on. At Summit Strategies, my office had windows that overlooked the downtown core. Real windows, not the internal office space I'd had at Brightwell. My workload was challenging but manageable. My boundaries were respected. When I said I needed a day off, nobody questioned it or made me feel guilty. My name was on the door. Not as senior strategist, but as director of client relations. I had a team of 3 people who actually reported to me, who I could mentor without worrying they were being positioned to replace me. And every major client I had built relationships with over 5 years? Still with me. Still trusting me. Still growing their accounts. Crawford Industries had expanded their contract. Pacific Holdings had referred 2 new clients. Northpoint Dynamics had increased their retainer by 40%. I wasn't just surviving. I was thriving. Tyler noticed the change. "You seem lighter," he said one evening as we cooked dinner together. "Like someone took weight off your shoulders." He was right. For 5 years, I had carried Brightwell. I had carried Victor's incompetence and Paula's corporate cowardice and the entire company's inability to see my value. Now I was only carrying my own work. And it felt easy. 6 months after leaving Brightwell, I spoke at an industry conference about client relationship management. The room was packed. I saw former colleagues in the audience, people who had watched me get fired and said nothing. I didn't call them out. Didn't shame them. I just presented my methodology for building trust, maintaining communication, and creating value that transcends company names. Relationships aren't assets, I said, clicking to my final slide. They're partnerships. And partnerships are built on respect. When companies forget that, when they treat people as replaceable, they lose more than employees. They lose everything those employees built. The applause was strong. Genuine. Afterward, 3 people approached me about job opportunities. 2 potential clients asked for my card. One of my old colleagues pulled me aside, voice quiet with guilt. "I should have said something when they fired you." "Yes," I agreed. "You should have. But I understand why you didn't." "Do you forgive us?" I thought about it. I don't need to forgive you. You need to learn from it. The next time you see someone being treated unfairly, speak up. That's worth more than apologies. Brightwell never recovered. They merged with a smaller firm 8 months after I left, absorbed into a company that kept the Brightwell name but replaced all senior leadership. Their revenue had dropped 60%. Their reputation was damaged beyond repair. I didn't celebrate. I didn't gloat. I just watched from a distance and felt grateful that I wasn't there anymore. Victor found work at a small consulting firm in another city. I heard through industry contacts that he was doing fine, nothing spectacular. Just fine. Which was probably always his ceiling anyway. Paula left HR and moved into operations. No more firing people. Just managing budgets and schedules. Maybe that suited her better. I didn't hate them anymore. Hate requires energy, and they didn't deserve mine. They were just people who had made bad decisions that hurt others. The market had corrected for it. That was enough. A year after my termination, Carolyn promoted me to partner at Summit Strategies. Youngest partner in the firm's history. My equity stake became real. My voice in company decisions became equal. In the meeting where they announced it, one of the senior partners said something that stuck with me. Allison didn't just bring clients. She brought integrity. She showed us what it looks like to succeed without compromising values. That's worth more than revenue. I thought about my doctor's office a year ago, about the burnout diagnosis, about lying in bed with a fever while Paula destroyed my life with a phone call. If they hadn't fired me, I would still be at Brightwell. Still overworked. Still undervalued. Still making Victor look good while he took credit. They thought they were punishing me. They thought firing me during medical leave would break me, would make me too scared and desperate to fight back. Instead, they freed me. They forced me to see my worth. They pushed me toward people who actually valued my contributions. Tyler and I bought a house that spring. Nothing huge, just a small place with a yard and enough space to breathe. We could afford it because I was making twice what Brightwell had paid me, because Summit believed in actually compensating people for their value. My mother came to visit, walking through the empty rooms before we moved furniture in. "You did this," she said, squeezing my hand. "You built this." She was right. Not the house. The life. I had built a life where being sick didn't mean being disposable. Where taking care of myself didn't cost me everything. Where my work was valued and my boundaries were respected. I still thought about that phone call sometimes. Paula's bright voice. The casual cruelty of being terminated while sick. The shock of realizing I meant nothing to people I had made rich. But I didn't think about it with anger anymore. Just with a quiet understanding that some people will never value you, and that's okay. You don't need their validation. You just need to know your own worth and find people who recognize it. If you're reading this because you've been forced out at your lowest moment, here's what I want you to know: your value doesn't disappear just because someone was arrogant enough to ignore it. They fired me when I was sick because they thought I was weak. They lost everything because they underestimated me. But I didn't destroy them through some elaborate revenge plot. I didn't sabotage them or scheme against them. I just walked away. And I thrived where I was finally respected. That's the calmest revenge there is. Not destruction. Just living well. Not proving them wrong through anger, but through success. Not fighting to change their minds, but building something better somewhere else. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is leave. Sometimes the best revenge is simply refusing to be small in places that tried to shrink you. They thought firing me would end my story. Instead, it just started the good part. And if you're in that moment right now, sick or scared or certain that you've lost everything, I need you to understand something. This isn't your ending. This is just the chapter where you stop letting other people write your story. The next chapter? That's all yours. Make it count.